Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Nevena Bajalac, welcoming you once again to a new episode where we bring some exciting and experienced guests for you to talk about business growth and how you can scale and grow and take your business and your company to the next level. And today I'm very excited because topic for today are mergers and acquisitions. And we have a special guest coming to us from Florida, United States, and his name is Richard Parker. And Richard has over 30 years of experience in transforming businesses and helping businesses acquire other businesses. And himself, in his journey, he had acquisition and acquired over 13 companies plus one co-investment, and they were ranging from $50,000 to $200 million. And in his advisory roles in transactions, he surpassed $2 billion. So he is an incredible guest to talk to us about mergers and acquisitions because his work has been published in Forbes, New York Times, and many other credible places in the United States and internationally. So Richard, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me, Nevena. Thank you again.
It is really a pleasure having someone of your caliber here talking to us about such an important topic. And I'm based in Dubai, and there is a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening here. And I know also in the world. So it's a topic that's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to learn from you today. But I want to ask you first a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you are? And who were you as a younger person? And how did you start it in business?
Okay, so well, I'll try to keep it short and not too boring. But I actually got into the M&A world quite by accident. I was, and this goes back, and I've been doing this for soon going to be 34 years. I was working for a company. I grew up in Montreal in Canada. I now live in South Florida, as you mentioned. And I was working for a company. I was 29 years old. I was doing very well. I was moving up the ranks quickly. And back in that time, I was making about $72,000 a year, which was pretty substantial at that point, and on a great trajectory. And then I did something really, really ridiculous. I bought a stock called Worlds of Wonder, which was in the I was in the toy business, and it was a company that was a supplier of ours. And someone told me about this concept of buying stock on margin, where you could basically buy double the stock for half the price, and everything sounds wonderful. When the stock price goes up, you sell the stock and you recover all your money, and you only laid out half. But what I didn't, what was I guess I was too goddamn stupid to even think about, was what happens if the stock goes down. And the stock absolutely tanked, and I lost all my money. I went $60,000 into debt. I was 29 years old. My first child is on the way. I have 4 children now and 1 grandchild. And I was really in a mess. I didn't know how the heck I was going to get out of it. And so I started thinking about what can I do to get out of this mess? I knew that I couldn't do it through my own income. I couldn't do it if I just moved to another job, paying slightly more, even though I was thrilled with where I was working. And my only options outside of going to Las Vegas and betting whatever little money I had left on the blackjack table, or number 17 black, or buying lotto tickets, which I don't do, was to go into my own business where I didn't have a ceiling on my earnings. And I took the little money that I had left. I acquired a small business, which was in a similar industry to what I was doing, and brought one of the lines where I was working for the company. I brought that on board, and I acquired a company and started building it. And along the way, I realized very quickly that the fastest way to grow my business was through acquisitions, small ones, because I was still a small little company. I was making within about a year and a half, I was making a little more than I was making before. I still wasn't paying off my debt that I incurred, but I was making some inroads. And I bought a company that was complementary to what I was doing. And it was a interesting acquisition. I didn't have the money to make the acquisition, but I convinced the owner that the little bit that I could put up, if I brought him in as a partner, and we could grow a substantial business. And I ended up putting up about $100,000, and they came on board, and we turned that company into a $4.5 million business, exceptionally profitable, and started buying some other companies along the way, similar ones that I could add on to my existing business, other ones that were complete departures. I had some good successes and some horrible failures. And I ultimately acquired the rights to Sega Video for Eastern Canada. That business exploded. and my business went from $2.5 million to $30 million. And I ended up selling that piece of the business back to Sega. And I relocated to Florida and got involved in a transaction down here, which went sideways. It wasn't enormous. It was a deal of about $1 million. But as I started digging into it, and it was really a complete mess. The company was moving money around. They weren't doing anything illegally, or I'm not accusing them of doing anything illegally, but there was so much commingling. They were taking from one company, lending money to another company, not keeping track of it. I couldn't get a handle on anything. And it was really, it was only because I had done a number of acquisitions that I was able to figure out that I couldn't figure it out. And I was
I
in the
love
middle
that.
of the due diligence. That's the conclusion I got, right? There was just too many unknowns. So I backed out of the deal and started thinking to myself about how, the average person who didn't have my experience. I'm not that smart. I just had been doing it a lot, and realized that the average person had no experience, would never have gotten to, they probably would, more than likely would have bought that business. The only reason why I was able to uncover the skeletons was because I had done it before. And that led me on a journey for a little over a year to investigate what's in the market for individuals looking to buy businesses. And I did an unbelievable amount of research with business owners, prospective business buyers, people who have bought businesses that had failed, other ones who had succeeded, with business brokers, with lenders, with accountants, with attorneys. And I realized there's no good resources for individuals. And that propelled me to write my course, How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price, which I did really to memorialize all the things I had done up to that point in my life. And I had no aspirations that it was going to turn into a business. I never dreamed it was going to turn into a business. Even the day before we launched, my wife asked me, so how many think you're going to sell? And I said, if I sell one and I help one person buy the right business or avoid buying the wrong one, it'll be great. And here we are, 20 years later, the materials are always updated. We've sold over 100,000 copies in 80 countries and have helped tens of thousands of people along the way. And I continued my journey of acquiring businesses, helping buyers. I do some buy-side representation. And then I got involved in 2017. I was hired by the Ray Dalio's family office to mentor his son, Devin, on the art of buying businesses. And so that's my journey. There was some good successes, some horrific failures, but I've learned a tremendous amount along the way. Have been having a terrific time and a lot of fun doing it. I love this whole world, and that's my story. So hopefully it's not too boring, but that's my summary.
Absolutely not boring at all. And I love your attitude that you're enjoying the journey. And it's so encouraging for so many entrepreneurs to really see examples of successful people like you in business who failed and failed on a large scale, right? And what a story that actually the biggest failure at the beginning led you on the journey where you may be supposed to be, or led you to a journey of acquiring businesses. And I mean, you not multiply it how many hundreds of times thanks to that failure, right, of losing the money. So if that never happened, you maybe not be here today, achieved everything you achieved. So that's, I think, like Steve Jobs said, we cannot connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect them looking backwards. And I think we always have to reflect like, oh, this failure leads me to learn something. And that's so inspiring. So thank you for that. So my next question for you is, first of all, why should people, I think a lot of people, entrepreneurs, if they're not familiar, or when they think about mergers and acquisitions, they think, oh, I have to have millions and purchasing big companies. But I know that's not true. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about maybe acquiring small businesses, and why are mergers and acquisitions or acquiring a company actually a good way to skyrocket your revenue and your profits?
Okay, so it's a really good question, because I think the first part about it, this whole idea of this whole label of mergers and acquisitions, I think that alone is intimidating to small, to individuals, because you think mergers and acquisitions, you think big Wall Street companies and big money required, and having to hire, incredibly high-priced attorneys and accountants. And so this whole concept of acquiring business, I think, for the average person seems like it's beyond reach. And it's not. I mean, this is doable by anybody. Now, not everybody will do it, but it's certainly doable by anybody. And so what has to happen? So that's, a lot of people fail, or they don't even enter it into the equation. And to your second question related to, the requirement of money, there's some conflicting information related to it. On the one side, you have all of these nonsensical pardon my French, these bullshit programs that people are promoting on the internet that says you can buy businesses making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for no money down and buy them in 30 days. And there's a proliferation of that on the market, which is ridiculous. Those don't work. I mean, that is not reality. It's delusional. It's a dream, or could be a nightmare. And those type of programs selling for thousands of dollars just don't make sense. This whole process, now you do need some money. It would be misleading for me, certainly, to tell people you don't need money. You do need money, but you need far less than people think, because there's incredible leverage in a number of different ways. In the United States and in many countries around the world, seller financing is a huge part of small business acquisitions, because the reality is, if you have a smaller business, the target buyer for that is going to be an individual or a smaller company. They don't have the money to buy it for all cash, and the banks don't lend for business acquisitions to individuals or people with no track record. So seller financing is something I've been teaching and preaching for 30 years. 91% of our clients get a component of that within their deals, and the percentages vary. And the reality is that the only way an individual, an owner of a small business, is going to get a deal done, they're going to have to provide seller financing. Now, in the United States, we also have this SBA program that provides tremendous leverage to people, lends up to $5 million. It's like 9-to-1 leverage, which is terrific. And even in other parts of the world where years ago seller financing was not part of the deal, it's becoming more common, because it's normal. It's what it takes to get the deal to the finish line. And so the percentages vary, but there's no question that with a small amount of capital, you can acquire a business. Now, you're not going to buy $100 million business if you have $100,000, but you certainly can leverage it significantly into a business. And for people, I say, the idea is get into something. Like, even if it's a smaller business to start and your aspirations are bigger business, buy a solid small business that you can apply your skills to and grow it, but get into something. I mean, you can't just stand on the sidelines thinking, I can't do this, or how do I do it? You get the knowledge you need, but you've got to get into the game. One thing for sure and for certain, if you don't get into the game, there's no way you're going to be able to grow your entrepreneurial skills. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So the key is you've got to get into it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. That's such an insight. And if somebody wants to acquire a company, what are your recommendations? You mentioned that you acquired a company which was a similar field that you were familiar at. So is it valuable to, I know some companies are for sale because maybe they're bankrupt, but they can have a huge database. So other company can acquire them, and because they have a similar product or they're in a similar industry and they know, oh, we have this huge database from this company, we'll acquire them, and we can sell other things to them. It doesn't matter they failed, but we can do it. So what is your recommendation if somebody is looking to acquire a company? Should it be something where you are in the industry or expert in, or how should people, what are some things people should look for when they're acquiring?
Okay, so there's two answers to that question. The first one, let's talk about the companies that may be not doing well, that have a database and are a potential acquisition. But those really are a potential acquisition for a company, as you said, that may be able to use that database. And in those cases, because growing your business through acquisition is a lot faster than trying to grow it organically. So in those cases where you have an existing business and there's an opportunity to acquire a company, whether it's not doing well or doing well, that you can mold into your business and complement what you're doing and have a larger customer base to sell your products to, that's a terrific way to grow your business. But that's for companies or businesses that are already established. For individuals, let's talk about the first point of companies that are distressed or bankrupt and have a database. I don't believe that an individual starting out should buy a distressed business, because I think it's nothing but stress. I believe in you buy a good business. Like, businesses have life cycles. They start off at the beginning, and at the beginning they're all garbage. Because if it's a brand new business, you don't know what it's going to lead to. And I call it the 3 G's on the hill. So it starts out as garbage. As you grow the business, it becomes good, and ultimately becomes great. You see, you're smiling, and then they fall off. I like businesses in the middle that are good businesses. I don't want to buy great businesses because they may not have more potential. They're going to cost a lot more. I like good, solid businesses that'll transition well to a new owner that someone can build and take from good to great. Now, the last part to your question is related to expertise, okay, and experience. Yes, it could be easier to potentially buy a business in an industry that you're familiar with. However, don't confuse experience with expertise. Just because you have experience in a certain sector, whatever that sector or industry may be, that makes you knowledgeable about a sector, but it doesn't make you an expert in running businesses. You just know that industry. The single most important thing that people have to do when they're buying a business is think about this. Whatever skill, whatever it is that you do best, has to be the single most important driving factor of the revenue and profits of any business you consider purchasing. So the emphasis has to be on your skill, whether it be sales, whether it be marketing, whether it be logistics, whether it be building a plan, whether it be putting metrics into place, whether it be operations, whatever that skill is. That's what you have to marry to a business that needs that particular skill as the single most important skill to drive the business, because it's much easier to learn an industry than it is to learn
Yes.
to become an expert in a skill. You can always learn a business. Take you 6 months. You get immersed, you learn a business. I mean, it's not no business. If it's more complicated than that, you shouldn't buy it. So on the one side, if you have a company, you can buy based on experience or a similar business. But as an individual, your focus has to be on your skill. What skill can you apply to what type of business? That's the single most important thing.
Okay. So if, for example, my expertise are sales, are you saying that I'm like, okay, this company is good, it's good company, but they just haven't done enough in sales, right? And if you buy them
100% correct.
and if we implement more sales, or if we implement more sales agents, and we just go into it, sales and marketing, we know this company has potential to grow.
That is absolutely correct. And I have my 5 golden rules for any business that I buy. I'll never buy one with 4, but sales and marketing is the number one at the top of the pyramid, because that's what I'm best at. So I know that a company is, if it needs that, and I can apply myself, my sales skill and sales and marketing skill, I'm less worried about the revenues. I want it to have high margins, and then everything catches up. But yes, absolutely correct. So that's a perfect example.
All right, I love that. So I want you to share with us some of the mistakes, maybe like you said, you didn't know when you were purchasing some of the companies, or you wanted to purchase and then you saw, oh, this is a mistake. So because I believe we learn the most from the mistakes, and then we get the most experience from mistakes. So what are some mistakes we should avoid if you're looking to purchase or acquire a company?
Well, we only have, I think, about a half an hour for the show, so I don't have there's not enough
Yes.
time to list out all the mistakes I've made over my life, because there's a lot of them. But it's true. But looking at it, when I think about one particular business, I had found a company in Canada that was in the ironworks business, and more elaborate ironworks. So if you think about wrought iron, whether it be railings or gates across driveways, or decorative iron, wrought iron, and it was a very impressive company. They did beautiful work. And I was younger. My parents actually had contracted them to do some work at their home, and I was really enthralled by their product and what they were doing. And I was talking to the owner. He was a very laid back, down to earth guy, and very sophisticated in his product, but very unsophisticated in business. And I looked at it and said, hey, what this business needs is sales. If this company could really expand its sales, then this business could grow significantly, because it seemed to have everything else in place. And I ended up acquiring the business. And the biggest mistake I made is it wasn't sales. What it was having the manufacturing know-how to understand what could be produced, because you had designers, interior decorators, homeowners, hotels
Yeah.
that would come to this company and say, here's what we want to do. But what they wanted to do, couldn't necessarily always be done, or had to be done in a different way, or could be done, but there had to be, again, not only a different way, some modifications or an adjustment to their thinking of what they really, thought that they originally wanted. The company had no shortage of demand. People were coming to them all the time. And so sales wasn't the issue. I thought it was, but sales wasn't the issue. It was the design and the engineering of the products. And I had no experience in that, zero. So we had a lot of very talented blue collar workers who were great at what they did. And because I had this mentality of sales being the requisite, and they had a culture of creating and engineering spectacular functional products that had to be customized to the particular situation. I couldn't even mesh with the people. I mean, we were respectful for one another, but it was like this, like we were coming from two different planets. And so it was a horrible mistake. I mean, I ended up just getting rid of the business, and it was a terrific learning experience for me, because even if you know the exact skill that you have to make sure that that is the skill that the business needs. And it was early in my career, and had I done a little more diligence, I would have found that out very quickly, because I sure as hell found out quickly after I bought it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this secret. I found out pretty quickly. It's just I failed to do the right investigation. And it's
Yes,
so
yes.
easy to do. It was just like I got focused on one thing, and just like all the other logic went out the window.
It happens, especially entrepreneurs. We're so excited, and we have so many ideas, and we see opportunities. And I want to just kind of wrap it up with this experience. So now, based on this mistake, let's call it a mistake, or this experience, how do you assess and make sure you can see early on, before you acquire a company, what exactly this company needs? Because that's what you said, for individual buying, it's the most important thing to discover.
Correct. So we understand that the application of skill to the business is critical. The way I like to look at it is the following. Nothing happens in the business unless this happens. So in other words, when you look at the business, whatever it could be, commercial landscaping, a vacuum heating and air conditioning company, an engineering firm, a manufacturer, there's always these different components to the business. Sales, marketing, advertising, manufacturing, distribution, whatever it is. But there's always one thing that you could put at the top of the list that say, nothing happens in this business unless this happens. So when you identify that, everything else you can hire for. For example, I was recently involved in a company, a very large sale. I was helping the owner, very large sale of a restoration business. They fixed when there's situation, when there was fire or mold or an accident in a home, they went in, they did the repair, they did the reconstruction. And you'd look at it and say, well, in that type of business, it's managing the job. Right? I mean, managing the job. Well, no, because in that business, they got all of their business from insurance companies. Insurance companies, when someone had an issue at their home, they called the insurance company. The insurance company said, look, you have two options. You can go out and get bids from a bunch of different contractors, submit them, and we'll approve one of them, but we may not approve the amount. So there'll be a gap. Or you can use our preferred vendor. The approval process is minimal and the amount gets approved. And so, but not all homeowners think that way. So the key was the sales and the interaction with the company, with the customer, because an individual from the company had to go see the homeowner and convince them to use them. And in that case,
Yes.
it was someone who has magnificent customer service, can take care of the customer and be empathetic. So you go, someone's house part of their house just burnt down. So you have to have someone who goes in, who's empathetic, who can sit with a customer, walk them through very methodically. And here's how we're going to do it. Here's the timing that it's going to take. We're going to take care of you. There's nothing to worry about. We're going to get this job in such a period of time. So you need someone who's a tremendous at interfacing with a consumer. And that's the skill. And a lot of people have that. A lot of people don't, but a lot of people have that. All of
Yes.
the other points, organizing the job, dealing with the insurance company, you can hire people for that. But if you don't have the right person who's interfacing with the client one by one, and it could be multiple, so it could be You're the owner, but you have to be able to train people how to do it as well, so you can scale the business. But that's the single most important driving factor of that business. So being able to identify it, because if you don't have the know-how and some of the things that we teach, you'd look at that and say, oh, the most important thing is managing the insurance companies or keeping the job organized. Yeah, they're important, but they're not the single most important thing.
Yes, I love that example, and it's so clear. So in the previous case with company in Canada, right, the most important thing was actually for them to be able to manufacture what their clients desire, right? And it was failing because of that. So they had inquiries and everything, but if you're not able to deliver what your client wanted for them, or that is such a amazing way to understand acquisition, and thank you for that. And I would like to wrap up this episode with maybe some last tips that you have for people who are maybe considering or would like in the future to acquire a company.
Sure. And again, I appreciate all your questions. So there's really three things that are most important for individuals, because the failure rate is quite high. If people, 90% of people who begin the search to buy a business never buy one. Our numbers are much different. 82% of our clients are successful. But the three things that people need to consider is, number one, knowledge. This is something they've never done before. Buying a business is completely different than buying a home. And so you have to acquire the right knowledge from the right sources. You have no track record, no experience. So the foundation of everything is knowledge, and making sure you're well equipped with the right information to go through all of the various steps of the process. That's number one. Number two is getting really good, a real good grip on what business is right for you, your greatest skill set. You don't worry about your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. Whatever it is that you do best, you apply to a business, because for everything else you can hire and then marry it to the right business. And the third thing is, there's no such thing as a perfect business. Every business has blemishes. Everything has warts. You're buying you want to buy a solid business, but there's going to be some problems with it. There's going to be some issues. Now, of course, if they're catastrophic, you don't buy it, but they're going to be incidental. But buying this perfect business doesn't exist. So this idea of, well, it's not perfect, I'm going to go try find something else. That's not perfect, I'm going to try something else. If you keep trying to find the perfect business, you will never buy a business. You have to mitigate all the risks, which you can, or the important risks, but there's some things that are just not great at the beginning, and so you have to ultimately solve for it. But every business has blemishes. Every business has warts, and so don't be too quick to try to find another business or go into the next one. Work the business and understand there's no perfect business. You just want a really good, solid business, obviously with no big problems like customer concentration or leases that are going to expire that are critical. So as long as they're just incidents, minor things, just learn to live with it. That's what entrepreneurs do. You just dust yourself off. It's not always perfect. You have to just learn to zig and zag a little bit.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much for those three tips. And if some of the listeners are interested to learn more about acquiring, mergers and acquisitions, you mentioned you have some courses. So please share with us how they can connect with you, how they can reach out. If there are any resources they can also buy from you or use, that would be also helpful for them.
Okay, great. So the easiest way is go to our website is richardparker.com. Very easy to remember, richardparker.com. We have hundreds of articles on there, free articles, lots of free reports. People could really learn about the process, dip their toe in, determine whether, if this is something they want to pursue, and they owe it to themselves. If you have any inkling of inclination, I think you owe it to yourself to pursue that. And on that site as well, there's information related to our course, how to buy a good business at a great price, that you could link to and order the courses from a sister site that we have, that we own, of course, but the main site, richardparker.com, has tons of resources. And similarly, if anybody has a question for me, just go to the contact page, and in the message, just ask them to forward it, my staff to forward it to me, and I'm happy to answer their questions directly.
Thank you so much, Richard, for everything. Thank you for your time, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. And make sure to go. We will put the link below to Richard's website. So click and use these incredible articles and free resources you can. Thank you, Richard, once again for being here. And thank you all the listeners for listening. And I will see you in the next episode.